Next, we're going to talk about some special cases where worrying about fields and interlacing is going to affect your workflow to make sure you get the best quality. Now, all of these examples I'm about to give only pertain if you're using full frame footage. You're trying to keep it 100%. If you're scaling or rotating or doing other things with your footage, all bets are off and you don't need to worry about these little niggling details I'm about to bring up. The first one has to deal with when you've got sources with different numbers of lines in them, and you're trying to keep things as sharp as possible. Now, those of us who have to work in the NTSC video format have been afflicted by this curse, where the normal D1 footage we used to use has 486 lines, but the DV footage that a lot of us are getting now has 480 lines. So the question is, how do you convert between those two while keeping resolution? Here I've opened up a composition that's already been set to D1 size. Now say someone has handed me a piece of DV footage to put into it. Here's 720 by 480, and I'm already separating it lower field first. Let's go ahead and drag it in and open the scale parameter. You might notice here we have some slight problems with black areas above and below the footage. That's because DV has fewer lines than D1 in the world of NTSC. How do you go about solving this? I'll show you the two wrong ways first. One thing you don't want to do is type in Command Option or Control Alt F and force it to fit. The black lines may be gone, but now you're scaling it in a vertical dimension, 101.2%, and you're going to cause those fields to soften up because they're not lining up with their original positions anymore. So I'd recommend not doing that. We'll go ahead and undo. The second thing not to do is to do what I just did. Drop it in and leave it centered. And here's why. When you put 480 into 486, you've got 3 lines above and 3 lines below. If I'm going from a lower field source to a lower field first render, we have a little bit of a problem here. By moving my footage down an odd number of lines, fields on the input no longer line up with fields on the output. If I were just to leave this centered and render it out as is, the result would be a softened image because I would only be rendering out interpolated fields every time I rendered a new field in After Effects. If you've got a DV source inside a D1 comp, you want to move it up 1 line to line 242. That way you only have 2 lines above, 4 lines below. You're skipping a nice, correct set of fields, and things will stay sharp from in to out. As far as whether or not these black areas are going to be a problem, in reality, the video is clipped off by the bezel around the video, and you're never going to see this. What if we're going the other direction? D1 footage into a DV comp. Here I have a DV comp, 480 lines, and here I have some D1 footage. Again, if I just drag it and throw it in there, I now have a slight bit of excess above and below, 3 lines in either direction. I don't want to just scale it to fit, because I'm going to be shrinking it vertically, causing fields to move to other lines in time than they originally were on. Not going to be ideal. And I don't want to leave it just centered for the exact same reason. I've got 3 lines above, 3 lines below. I'm not shifting it by even pairs of fields, and I'm going to end up with a softer image. So what you do in this case is you move D1 footage down 1 pixel to line 241 inside a DV comp. Now I've got 2 lines above, 4 lines below. I'm going to go ahead and crop off nice pairs of fields, and things are going to stay sharp. What if your source and your comp both have the same number of lines, like you're bringing a DV source into a DV comp, or a D1 source into a D1 comp? In this case, most of the time you do not want to shift your footage just 1 pixel up or down. If you do that, you'll now be moving things off into a half field, and again you're going to lose some resolution. The one exception to this rule is if you need to change your field order. If you happen to get some footage in that was captured upper field first, but you want to go out lower field first, go ahead and bring that footage into your comp, then shift it up or down just 1 pixel, and you will in essence flip the field order. Render that back out again, and you'll have the sharpest possible image, and you can go ahead and mix it with your other lower field first footage. The next special case has to do if you're masking or rotoscoping field-based footage. Now again, the rate of our footage is 29.97, so normally we'd go ahead and set up a comp, same rate, 29.97, and start masking out based on that frame rate. So say I've made 1 mask here for his helmet, page down to the next frame, move the mask to another position, page down to the next keyframe, and I've moved the mask to another position for his helmet. But I'm not seeing all of the motion. Remember, fields are going at twice the frame rate. So if you really want to make sure that your masking or roto is dead on accurate, double the frame rate in that composition. I'll go back to home. As I step through, I am now seeing the motion at the field in between those frame boundaries. Now, quite often you can get away with masking every frame, then just go back and see whether or not your fields still look good. However, if there's sudden motion in your footage, or the motion's not fluid, it's very herky-jerky, you may indeed need to go back and put additional mask keyframes in on the fields. So always check your work. The third special case has to deal with motion tracking field-based footage. This is kind of the opposite of masking and roto. You may not want to track every single field, and I'll show you why. Let's open up a piece of footage here that has fields, lower field first. I'll Option or Alt double click on it. And as I step through these fields, you'll notice a couple interesting things. The objects that are not moving, like the rocks, stay somewhat stationary, while the objects that are moving, like the water or the birds, change from field to field as I hit page down. Okay, that's all as we expect. Now let's look at a few things like these little blades off of the irises that are surrounding this bird bath. Watch what happens as I page down. They seem to change position. Watch this iris tip right here. One field, down. Next field, up. Next field, down. Next field, up. Down, up. Down, up. It's not that that blade of the iris is moving every single field. It's just that because we're separating fields, we're seeing the upper field, then the lower field, then the upper field, then the lower field. And that's creating an apparent shift in the position of your objects. That shift can throw off your tracking. So let's go ahead and show a quick example. Open up the tracking dialog in After Effects and say track motion. Just for the sake of argument, I'll put this quickly over something that I want to track, like the bill of his helmet. Now inside the options for the tracker, you do have the ability to track fields if you want to. Most occasions you will not. Leave this off. However, if you do run into a piece of footage that does have very sudden or herky-jerky motion, go ahead and enable this option before doing your track.